Americans-backed ceasefire begins in Syria. No attacks by government forces are reported. And moving on to May 1st. On the first anniversary of the announcement of Osama bin Laden's death, President Obama makes a surprise visit to Afghanistan. During his visit, Obama signs an agreement with President Karzai that promises the US will provide Afghanistan development assistance for 10 years after troops withdraw in 2013. From Afghanistan, Obama gives a speech addressing Americans directly. May 7th. While Putin officially takes office, protests 20,000 strong continue and police arrest 120 people. The violence is a dramatic shift because even though the anti-government protests have been going on for months, the demonstrations had been peaceful until now. Dressed in riot gear, police search cafes and restaurants for protesters. The demonstrators taken into police custody are sent to military draft offices. May 8th. North Carolina passes an amendment to ban gay marriage by a margin of more than 20%. By doing so, North Carolina becomes the 30th state in the US to include an anti-gay marriage amendment in its constitution. May 9th. During an interview at the White House with ABC's Robin Roberts, President Obama declares his support for gay marriage for the first time. Regarding the issue, he says, and I quote, "I've just concluded that for me personally, it is important for me to go ahead and affirm that I think same-sex couples should be able to get married." End quote. With the declaration, Obama becomes the first US president to back gay marriage while in office. May 10th. JP Morgan Chase, the largest bank in the United States, announces it has lost more than $2 billion in trading. In a statement, Chief Executive Jamie Dimon blames the loss on, quote, errors, sloppiness and bad judgment, end quote. Dimon also says that the losses can, quote, easily get worse, end quote. May 14th. Ina Drew, the chief investment officer responsible for the trading that led to the $2 billion loss, retires from JP Morgan Chase. The bank announces that it will form a team of senior executives to investigate the loss. May 17th. Facebook becomes a public company, raising $14 billion in its initial public offering at $38 a share, which gives the company a value of $104 billion. This makes Facebook the third largest public offering in the history of the United States, behind General Motors and Visa. However, shares start selling at $42.05, but close at $38.23, only 0.6% above IPO price. May 20th. A 6.0 magnitude earthquake hits the northern region of Emilia-Romagna, killing at least 5 people. Dozens more are injured, and many historic buildings are damaged. At least 3,000 people are left homeless. A 5.1 magnitude aftershock causes further damage to the region. May 21st. A government task force concludes that the prostate-specific antigen blood test, also called the PSA test, is more harmful than beneficial. The task force reports that 1 man in every 1,000 who takes the PSA test may avoid death due to the screening, but 1 man for every 3,000 will die prematurely due to complications from prostate cancer treatment. The findings were met with resistance, especially from various medical groups, especially prostate cancer advocacy groups. Now moving on to June 1st. A massive wildfire continues to spread in New Mexico. The fire is burning through 190,000 acres of the Gila National Forest. More than 1,200 firefighters are on hand, trying to battle the wildfire, already the largest in the state's history. June 2nd. Former President of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak, is sentenced to life in prison for being an accomplice in the killing of unarmed protesters during the January 2011 demonstrations. The judge dismisses corruption charges against Mubarak because the statute of limitations has run out. Lower-level officials are acquitted. Angry over the verdict, thousands of demonstrators hit the streets in Cairo and other cities. Egypt's military-led government announces it will appeal the verdict. June 11th. A wildfire burns across 60 square miles in the Colorado Mountains, 50 miles west of Fort Collins. The fire destroys more than 100 buildings and houses. In New Mexico, hundreds of people flee a wildfire burning near Ruidoso. The fire burns 54 square miles wide. Meanwhile, the largest fire in New Mexico's history continues to burn through the Gila National Forest. According to officials, that fire is raging across 434 square miles and is only 37% contained. June 24th. Election regulators declare the Muslim Brotherhood candidate Mohamed Morsi the winner of Egypt's first competitive presidential election. Morsi becomes the country's fifth president and first from outside the military. Morsi, who won with 51.7% of the vote, is also the first Islamist elected leader of an Arab state. Now moving on to July. July 4th, physicists at CERN, the world's largest particle physics laboratory located outside Geneva in Switzerland, discover a new subatomic particle. The particle appears to be the Higgs boson, the elusive last key to understanding why we have life and diversity in the universe. The Higgs boson is the missing part of the Standard Model, equations that have stood as law of the cosmos for 35 years. July 7th. For the first time since Colonel Muammar Gaddafi was killed, Libyans vote in the national election. At least 2 people are killed due to armed assaults on voting centres in the city of Kafur. Some voting centres closed due to an ongoing battle between tribes. Despite these obstacles, turnout is over 60%. July 8th. Early election results show a coalition led by Mahmoud Jibril is ahead of Islamist parties in votes. Jibril is a Western-educated political scientist. His coalition's lead is a sign that Libya, unlike Egypt and Tunisia, is not trending towards Islamist rule. July 19th. Russia and China veto a United Nations Security Council resolution to impose sanctions on the Syrian government. The proposed UN sanctions are intended to push Syria into putting a peace plan into action and ending its 17-month-old conflict. July 20th. During a midnight screening of The Dark Knight Rises, a gunman identified as James Holmes, aged 24, opens fire on the crowded theatre in a Denver suburb. 12 people are killed and 58 others are wounded. Holmes is charged with 142 counts, including first-degree murder, attempted murder, and possession of explosives. Now moving on to August. August 5th, a plutonium-powered rover named Curiosity successfully lands on the planet Mars. Larger than earlier rovers, Curiosity will spend 2 years examining the land, looking for evidence that conditions on Mars are fit for life. NASA celebrates the mission with a post-landing news conference. Associate Administrator for NASA's Science Mission Directorate, John M. Grunsfeld, says, quote, "There are many out in the community who say NASA has lost its way, that we don't know how to explore. I want you to look around tonight at those folks with the blue shirts and think about what we've achieved." End quote. August 7th. Floods from torrential rain submerge Manila, capital of the Philippines, and its suburbs. More than 50 people are killed in the storms and flooding. At least 250,000 are evacuated. August 16th. Ecuador announces that it is granting political asylum to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Assange has been staying at the country's embassy in London while waiting for the decision. The decision further strains relations between Ecuador and Great Britain. Foreign Minister Ricardo Patino announces the asylum at a news conference where he says, quote, "The government of Ecuador, faithful to its tradition of protecting those who seek refuge in its territory or in its diplomatic missions, has decided to grant diplomatic asylum to Julian Assange." End quote. Patino adds that Assange might face the death penalty if tried in the United States. Britain continues to reject the request for Assange to be moved from the embassy in London to Ecuador. Britain maintains its legal obligation to extradite Assange to Sweden, where he is still wanted for questioning over accusations of sexual assault. August 17th. The 3 members of the all-female punk band Pussy Riot are convicted of hooliganism and sentenced to 2 years in a penal colony for performing an anti-Putin song on the altar of Moscow's main Orthodox cathedral. At the sentencing of one of the most high-profile trials that Russia has seen in years, activists outside the courthouse protest, chanting, quote, "Free Pussy Riot," end quote. Police arrest dozens of protesters. Rallies supporting the 3 women are held in cities around the world, including London, New York, and Paris. Immediately following the verdict, the United States, other governments, and human rights groups criticized the decision, calling the sentence severe. The women's lawyers say they will appeal the decision. August 20th. President Obama vows military action against the Syrian government if biological or chemical weapons in Syria are moved. It is the biggest threat of US intervention so far. August 22nd. After 19 years of negotiations, Russia becomes the newest member of the World Trade Organization. August 24th. Health officials in Texas confirmed that 640 people have been infected with the West Nile virus. 23 people have died. The outbreak is most severe in Dallas County, but the virus has spread across Texas and into other parts of the country. The mayor of Texas has declared a state of emergency. To combat the outbreak, low-flying planes and trucks have sprayed pesticides throughout Dallas to kill adult mosquitoes. August 29th. Exactly 7 years after Katrina battered the Gulf Coast, Hurricane Isaac hits the same area. Declared a Category 1, Isaac's winds roar at 80 miles per hour and the hurricane moves slowly across the region, but it lacks the strength of Katrina. Around 3,000 people evacuate Plaquemines Parish, an area 95 miles from New Orleans. In Louisiana, more than 600,000 residents lose power, but the city of New Orleans avoids any major damage. Now moving on to September. September 5th. Scientists discovered that gene switches, once thought as junk in DNA, actually play vital roles in how cells, organs, and tissues behave. The discovery is considered a major scientific breakthrough. Many diseases, such as diabetes and high blood pressure, appear to be caused by tiny changes within these gene switches. The discovery will also provide clues to how the environment affects disease risk and how one identical twin gets a disease like cancer while the other remains healthy. Also on September 5th, Texas state health officials report that the death toll from the West Nile virus continues to rise. In Texas, there have been 1,113 cases so far, including 40 deaths, the most of any state. Nationally, there have been 1,993 cases reported, including 87 deaths. September 10th. 26,000 public school teachers go on strike in Chicago to protest against proposed changes. The strike gains national attention and may affect teachers' unions nationwide, as well as the upcoming November election in the United States. September 11th. Violent protests erupt as the US Embassy in Cairo over the release of a YouTube film entitled Innocence of Muslims, produced in the US, that supposedly insulted the Prophet Muhammad and criticised